Mash is a very powerful gym bro with no magic, living in a world where everyone has magic powers. In order to save his father's life, he enrolls in a magic academy where he hopes to become the strongest magician that ever lived. All of these began with Mash lifting some weights in the woods. The dumbhead lives with his old father, Regro Bernadette. While Regro thinks about his son, Mash pulls out the door to get into the house. This scares the hell out of him, causing him to scream like a teen girl at a Justin Bieber concert. Seeing that it's just his son, he yells at him for ripping out the door. In Mash's defense, he states that he couldn't remember if he had to pull or push the door. Hearing him say this, Regro is surprised, since Mash has lived in that house all his life. He angrily continues to yell at Mash, and the latter eventually apologizes to his father, promising to fix the door. Trying to do so, Mash ends up destroying the door even further. This leaves Regro boiling in anger. Later that day, Regro is about to head out, and he instructs Mash not to leave the house or go into the city. However, immediately his father heads out. Mash wastes no time and runs straight to the city in search of some cream puffs. While walking through the street, he partially covers his face, and looking around, he wonders why everyone is using magic for even the most basic things. Eventually, he arrives at a cream puff shop. When he offers the seller the coins for the puffs, he notices that they have been squeezed. This shocks him to his bones. Noticing this, Mash bends them back in shape. Seeing him do this freaks the seller out even more. Without wasting much time, he hands Mash his cream puff. Shortly after, the hood on his cape falls off, revealing that he has no mark on his face. Seeing this, everyone is surprised since this signifies that he has no magic. While this happens, a magic police officer, Brad Coleman, pays attention to the news, where a young, promising student is being talked about. Shortly after, Brad rises to take care of a prisoner he has tied and tortured. Just as he is about to continue, he gets informed about an unmarked human in the city. Meanwhile, Mash is still unaware of the situation he finds himself in. Just then, he is reminded of his father's words, telling him to never go into the city. While he apologizes in his mind, he doesn't regret coming since he got the cream puffs he came for. On his way, he mistakenly crashes into a chubby-looking police officer who gets angry because his uniform has just been stained by Mash. Angrily, he starts ranting, and to ease his pain, Mash offers him a cream puff. This gets him even angrier, especially since Mash has just offered him a half-eaten cream puff out of pity. He slaps the cream puff out of his hands and goes ahead to start a fresh set of rants. Furthermore, he seeks to know what Mash would be doing about his stained uniform. In response, Mash rips the uniform apart, claiming that he would wash and return it to the officer. This gets the officer even angrier. In the middle of this, Brad arrives, feeling like a top G, and urges him to stop making a scene. Just as he is about to start asking questions, Regro arrives, swiftly grabbing Mash and running back to the forest. Watching this happen, Brad is pleased, since he thinks finishing this case would give him a chance to be promoted. He immediately sends a magic bird to go after them. On getting home, Regro yells at Mash for going to the city and ignoring his instructions. The pitiful Mash, seeing how angry his father is, apologies and promises to never do it again. Seeing him in this state, Regro finds it hard to still be mad at him. However, he orders him to repeat the morning's training routine as punishment. Before leaving, Mash hands his father the rest of the cream puffs he had bought earlier. After he leaves, Regro ponders on how much his son has grown into the opposite of what Heg thought an adolescent should be. They had lived in the forest to hide Mash from the rest of the world, but he worries that now that the magic police know about Mash, there could be trouble. Due to this, he ponders upon a possible solution. However, it's already too late as Brad's bird has already found their location, and now he breaks into the house. At this moment, Mash had just finished the training routine and was heading back home to have some cream puffs. He is about to head in when he hears strange voices. At this time, Brad tries to torture Regro into telling him where Mash is. However, the oldie doesn't flinch. Remembering how challenging it was for him before he found Mash, he is more determined not to reveal Mash's location. Instead, he screams at the top of his voice, ordering Mash to run away. This causes Brad to figure out that the boy could be close by, so he orders his men to search the area. Just as they approach the door, Mash barges in and lands a silencing punch on one of them. Just then, the fatty officer from before approaches him, and Mash rips his uniform again. Before he could go on a ranting spree, Mash hands him a couple of slaps to shut him up. To finish this up himself, Brad conjures a powerful spell which had been used to drive away a dragon previously, throwing it at Mash. Shockingly, to everyone, including Regro, Mash shoves the spell off with a backhand slap. The shock seems more evident on Brad's face as he wonders if magic can be easily puffed like this. Just then, he launches another spell, powerful enough to destroy the entire area. As you'd expect, Mash shoves it off once again. Angrily, Brad throws multiple spells at him, and Mash casually juggles them all, after which he uses one of them as a football to dribble the chubby officer, causing them to be more infuriated. Seeing his father's wand on the floor, he picks it up. This leaves Brad wondering if the boy could actually do magic. Immediately, he sets up a barrier to protect himself from any form of magic the boy would throw at him. However, Mash throws the wand at him, destroying the barrier and leaving a cut on his face. At this point, Brad accepts defeat. Having saved his father, Mash threatens Brad to leave his family alone or risk dying at his hands. In response, Brad suggests that they make a deal. He asks Mash to enroll in a magic school and work hard to be chosen as the best student who would be referred to as the Divine Visionary. Hearing this, Rigro urges his son not to take the deal, but Brad assures Mash that they will be hunted down for the rest of their lives if he refuses. Considering this, Mash accepts the deal against his father's wishes, but he assures his father that he is only doing so to make sure they get to live in peace again. Hearing this, Rigro is proud of his son. Later on, Mash arrives at the school. He is met by an extremely difficult entrance examination. While the students hang around, the Invigilator arrives in grand style. He introduces himself as Claude Lucci and instructs them to take their seats. Since there were no seats there, he shows off by using magic to create seats and writing materials, leaving the new intakes thrilled. All except Mash, who Claude notices. He decides to make the exam tough for him. The first test involved questions revolving around the paper with the use of magic. However, Mash finishes way before the 30 minutes allocated to them by ordering the revolving questions to stay put. When Mash submits, Claude is surprised that a student whom he thinks of as a slacker is doing this much. He becomes really furious and is prepared to make things more difficult for Mash. For the next test, he creates a very complex maze and instructs everyone to find their way out within 30 minutes. Mash sets out, but is interrupted by a young lady who asks if she can tag along with him. Seeing the damsel in distress, he accepts. However, she clearly becomes a distraction as she continues falling into traps. Due to this, he decides to ditch her. Not wanting this, she stops him with magic, binding his hands and legs together. Mash breaks free from her trap after finding out that she had deceived him for a selfish purpose. When he takes off, she gets attacked by a giant who seeks an answer to his riddles. Not having an answer, she falls on her knees and begs. He ignores her pleas and is about to attack her when Mash slides in, saving her sorry life. He punches the life out of the giant. With little time left, Mash and the girl break through the walls. Seeing this, Claude is shocked to his bones. Just before he could react to this, the headmaster, whose name is Master Wahlberg, appears. He beckons on everyone to be silent, as they will begin the final interview immediately. He also states that from that point on, he will take charge of the examination. To continue, he uses magic to teleport Mash into the interview room. There, the headmaster seeks to know why he chose the academy. In response, he states that it is to live in peace with his family. In order to teach him a lesson, the headmaster causes the room to transform into a stormy place. Even with this, Mash is calm. With how Mash handled this situation, the headmaster is convinced that he is a kind of person who possesses the capacity to assist others. After this, the headmaster apologizes for any inconvenience he must have caused to Mash. With the completion of the interview, Mash is welcomed into Easton Magic Academy. Later on, the new students attend their first class as the professor teaches them one of the most basic spells, which is the lock opening spell. After that, he instructs them to try it out. To the surprise of everyone, instead of casting the spell, Mash breaks the lock into two. This leaves the professor extremely infuriated. Meanwhile, a student who has been watching the whole scene is irritated by Mash's personality and wishes that he is never a roommate with that kind of person. However, things didn't turn out well for him when he checked out his room only to see that his new roommate is no one but Mash. Realizing this, he lets out a loud scream and introduces himself as Finn Ames. Amidst all this, the secret that Mash cannot use magic remains hidden to everyone except him. Instead of figuring out a way around this, he spends his time eating his favorite snack, cream puffs. While doing so, he remembers that they would be having a broom flying class the next day, and he surprisingly has no broom for the class. Upon realizing this, he asks Finn to lend him his broom. The next day, the students gather around for the broom class. While the teacher addresses them, she instructs them to channel magic energy into their brooms and command it to fly. As easy as this might sound, the students were unable to go through with even the first instruction as they found it hard to command their brooms to fly. Not wanting to be mocked, Mash channels his strength and steps powerfully on the ground, causing his broom to float into his hands. Then, in a sly move, he utters the word, "Fly." This act confuses the hell out of the students, who state that Mash just cheated since he already had the broom in his hand before he said fly. Meanwhile, the other students have finally been able to float their brooms. So, the teacher states that it is time to evaluate how fast they can go. Hearing this, one of the students, who clearly has a beef with Mash, challenges him to a race. Without thinking twice, Mash accepts the deal, and the two get set to begin the race. The student, however, is very confident that he would win this race since he has been riding brooms since middle school. When the race begins, Mash leaves the student behind in extraordinary speed. This leaves him stunned beyond imagining. The teacher, on the other hand, is extremely surprised to see a new world record for broom racing being set. The other students claim they didn't even see Mash when he moved. Finn, however, had a good look and was able to see what really happened. He claims to have seen Mash throw the broom in the air immediately the race began and use his strength to raise himself on the broom, using air resistance to reduce his speed and mounting the broom in mid-air. Meanwhile, the student angrily states that Mash cheated. He intends to make a big deal out of this, but the top student in the school named Cavil Lloyd steps in. He asks to be friends with Mash and that they meet after school that day. This gets mixed reactions from the other students, who clearly know Cavil to be a bully. Later that day, Cavil meets with the student who had challenged Mash earlier, and we realize that the student had actually been sent by him. He punishes the dummy for messing up a task as simple as this. At that moment, Mash and Finn are walking past the hallway, and he asks Finn who Cavil is. In response, Finn reveals that Cavil is the son of a high-ranking member of the Bureau of Magic. And since the Bureau of Magic is absolute in the realm, Cavil possesses some authoritative powers amongst the other students. Having heard this, after school, instead of going to meet Cavil like they had agreed, Mash spends his time in the kitchen making cream puffs. When he tastes them, he wishes his father was here with him to taste them too. Later on, in class, Mash brings out his textbook to find out that it has been destroyed. While he wonders how, he assumes they are falling apart. Just then, Cavil comes to meet him, asking why he didn't come for their meetup. In response, he says he was making cream puffs. As much as this annoyed Cavil, he tried to keep a straight face. Hearing about Mash's dream to become a divine visionary, he offers to put in a good word for him to the vice principal, if only Mash does as he says. For starters, Cavil orders him to do so many menial jobs. The next day in class, Mash brings out his textbook to see that it has once again been destroyed. This time, he asks Finn for his. Finn, however, gets scared and refuses, but eventually does so when Mash refers to him as a good friend. After that, Mash meets with Cavil and his two friends, and they make him clean water off the ground. While doing so, they all walk away, leaving him behind. In the midst of his latest chore, he feels Finn's textbook in his coat and decides to seek him out in order to return it. At this moment, Finn gets confronted by Cavil. This makes us realize that he is responsible for Mash's destroyed textbooks. However, all this had been on Cavil's orders. This time Cavil orders him to burn Mash's uniforms, but feeling guilty about how he has treated Mash, Finn refuses to go ahead with this. This causes Cavil to smash Finn's head to the ground using magic. At this point, Mash, who is still looking all around for Finn, finds his friend with his head on the ground and bleeding. In this state, Finn apologizes for what he had done. He says he decided to stop after Mash called him his friend. Cavil, on the other hand, is unbothered about this, stating that Finn owes him an apology and invites Mash for a meal with the vice principal. He assumes Mash would continue to be the dumb and gullible boy that he had thought he was. While talking, Mash walks towards him and grabs his hair, smashing his face to the ground. Instead, he asks Cavil to apologize. While this is happening, the vice principal is just around the corner. He threatens to hold a school conference regarding the involvement of Finn and Mash in this violent incident. While the vice principal blabs on, Mash hurriedly kicks him in the face to shut him up. This gets him very angry as he threatens to expel Mash. Due to this, Mash digs up the ground and throws him. He lets the vice principal know that just as he can expel any student anytime, he can also be buried anytime. When the vice principal shows no remorse, Mash goes ahead with burying him, leaving him screaming loudly. Due to this, Mash gets summoned by the headmaster and shown a letter by the Bureau of Magic, ordering that he be expelled. However, he chooses to ignore the order of the Bureau since he feels Mash did the right thing. With this, he hopes Mash gets a chance to become a divine missionary. However, to do so, Mash must be the top student at the academy, which would require gathering enough coins through schoolwork and activities. Although the coins are different and are categorized in gold, silver, and brass, as expected, those with more gold coins are highly regarded. Later in the day, while walking with Finn, Mash is met by a student named Tom, who asks him to represent their dorm, Alder Dorm, in a duelo match. Apparently, Tom is a great sportsman and last year's duelo MVP. Since Mash knows nothing about this, he doesn't seem interested. However, Tom continues to convince him, recounting his extraordinary skill in the broom race. Eventually, Mash is forced to accept. The next day, the competition begins and the others get competitive mid-air while Mash remains on the ground. Although he couldn't fly since he possessed no magic, he remembers his father and just how important it is for him to go ahead with this in his aim to get the required number of coins. While he thought about this, everyone wondered what he was doing standing and yelled at him to fly already. Seeing that he had chosen to be a statue, Tom goes to remind Mash of his vow to be number one. After that, while playing the game, Tom gets hit by an opponent and ends up with a fractured bone. Witnessing this, Mash picks up his broom and springs up in the air. Just then, he asks for the ball and it is given to him. Seeing this, the opponents flew towards him, attempting to take the ball from him. But as he threw the ball, it swooshed past them and entered the ring. Everyone was thrilled at the sight of this. Shockingly, the ball flew back to Mash, and he continued to throw it in such a way that he scored, and it kept coming back to him. Eventually, Mash won this for his team with an outrageous margin. Due to this, his team was given silver coins. Shortly after, while Mash and Finn were talking, Tom approaches him in the hallway and thanks him for winning this for them. By the next day, Mash became the most popular guy in school, due to how overwhelming the attention was getting for him. He asks Finn for help. Suddenly, Lance Crown entered the classroom, and he asked if he could join them in their fun. Tom was shocked to see that he had 2 marks on his face, which signified that he was a twice as powerful mage compared to them. Lance had come to suggest that they do something fun. He traps Tom, Finn, and the nosy girl in a bottle and challenges Mash to a duel in order to save his friends. They both met in the forest, and Mash seeks to know what this was about. In response, Lance told him to call it a bet. They would have to bet each other's silver coins on this duel, even though Tom advised him not to do it. Mash is determined to save his friends and grab this extra coin. Lance took out his wand and cast a spell to mark their fight zone. When the fight began, Lance cast a spell that subdued Mash to the ground. Mash tried to stand up under the gravity of the spell, but Lance told him it was futile. Immediately, Mash attacked by hitting him, and something fell from him. It was a pendant with the picture of a little girl in it. This happens to be Lance's sister. At that moment, Lance tells Mash to give it back, and he does. After this, the two stopped fighting for a moment, but Lance threatens to drop the bottle off the cliff and speed up its fall with his magic. Everyone in the bottle began to panic for their lives after hearing this. While this happens, he remembers the sad moment of his life when his sister was battling a disease that threatened to take her power gradually, and then her life. This was his reason for wanting to become a divine visionary. Finally, he threw the bottle off the cliff and increased the falling speed with his magic. He looked back to ask Mash what he would do about it, but surprisingly for him, Mash was ready. He ran at the speed of light to save his friends and got back to the top of the cliff in no time. Lance finds it unbelievable. He wondered if he was using physical enhancement magic. Suddenly, he snapped out of it. He did not want to falter because he still needed to help his little sister, so he felt he needed to stop fighting with Mash at that point. Meanwhile, the bottle Mash had saved happened to be empty, so he enhances his speed and searches Lance's body to find the real one. Since this basically signified his defeat, Lance hands the silver coin to Mash as agreed. The outcome makes Mash wonder what would have happened if they really fought. Immediately after Mash released his friends, they all thank him for saving their sorry lives. Meanwhile, in this academy, 4 dorms exist: Alder, which houses students with courage and conviction; Orca, which houses students with wisdom and willingness; and Lang, which houses students with ability and ambition. The uniqueness of the characteristics of each dorm makes them rivals against each other. In the Alder dorm, where Mash and Finn live, Mash reveals that he has 2 silver coins. Since 5 coins make up a gold coin, he is left with 3 to complete. Their moment of relaxation is immediately halted when Finn remembers that they were given assignments which they haven't done. Remembering this, they panic. It gets worse when he remembers that it is a portion assignment which they have to submit unless they intend to risk being severely marked down and find themselves in the dropout range. While Finn panics, Mash offers him a cream puff. Their panicking is eventually interrupted by Lance, who wonders why they haven't done their assignment. Since they have just been loitering around doing nothing, Lance refers to them as the dictionary definition of slackers. While they do not argue with this, Finn seeks to know if Lance has done his assignment, and he states that he has. This doesn't surprise Finn, who expected such an answer from Lance, the top student in the class. As they talk, Mash walks up to Lance and opens up the pendant hanging on his neck. This reveals the image of his sister Anna in a bright reflection. This reflection causes him to be thrown to the wall. Due to this, he passes out. When Lance regains consciousness, he takes them to the kitchen where he provides them with the necessary ingredients needed to mail their potion, one of which is a mandragora, a living root which screams very loudly. According to Lance, in order to use this as an ingredient, they would have to silence its screams. He shows them how to silence it using the spell Quintus. After that, he hands them each a mandragora. Finn tries his best to replicate the spell, but finds it hard to do so as the mandragora continues to scream. Seeing him fail in his attempts, Mash offers him some advice on how to make it work. At that moment, we think he will get his done in no time. Unfortunately, when he does his, the mandragora starts to scream very loudly. While Mash faces his failed attempt at magic, Lance instructs Finn to focus his magic on one point, giving him clearer instructions to make it work. When Finn does this, the mandragora falls asleep. On the other hand, Mash's mandragora becomes huge and attacks him. He dodges and gives it a powerful slap, causing it to pass out. With this, he feels the task is complete. With that part of the portion making complete, Lance teaches them the next step. The sleeping mandragoras have now become herbs, which he turns into a compound by cutting, frying, and adding some spices. As much as the process seemed simple for Mash, it was very complicated for Finn. When Mash tries to replicate it, stating that he is good at anything that does not involve magic, he ends up making a cream puff. This shocks Finn to the bones, as he wonders how that is even possible. Lance doesn't see it as an issue at first, as he thinks Mash is trying to mess with him. However, when he tries it again, he ends up producing the same result. This is even more surprising to Lance, who spent his time narrating and following up the entire process. With this, Lance concludes that Mash is completely useless with anything that doesn't involve fighting. Just then, he warns Mash, stating that he would never lose to him again, revealing that there is a reason he needs to join the Bureau of Magic. We all know that reason is his sister Anna. However, when Mash seeks to know what the reason is, Lance states that it is none of his business. Although he acknowledges the fact that Mash equaled him in combat, he is determined not to allow some nobody take away Mash's coins. Mash, on the other hand, doesn't feel the need to be warned since he is confident it would not happen. Meanwhile, the principal thinks about the all-dorm off-campus class coming soon. He wonders if Mash would be alright. At the same time, some students walk past the hall, and one of them is hit by a red-haired student who passes without apologizing. This makes them angry, and they try to call him to action. Shockingly, he easily whoops their asses, referring to them as side characters who have no rights to give him orders. In a shocking turn of events, the students in the Lang dorm are being told about the power of the divine missionaries. Apparently, they are the ones who rule the world. The leader orders them to seize all the coins belonging to the students in Alder. The next day, the students are made to wait in the woods in preparation for the outdoor class. Mash, when asked, assumes they are going for camping. But Lance doesn't think that's the case since they are in a magic school. While waiting, the red-haired kid who had beaten the other students arrives. He introduces himself as Barrett and doesn't stop blabbing. When he approaches the trio, they find him to be weird. He, however, recognizes Mash immediately as the student everyone talks about. While he continues blabbing, his talk is interrupted by a girl who runs towards Mash in admiration. Seeing how close she is to him pisses off. He is unable to hold in his disgust at the situation, and blurts out the fact that he hates guys who get attention from women, threatening to kill Mash. He feels offended that no girl admires him and guys like Mash who are hot get all the attention from girls. This, he claims, led him to want to join the Bureau of Magic in order to rid the world of hot guys like Mash. While he rambles on, a teacher appears, stating that the exercise would be done by the Adler and Lang dorms only, with their rewards being either bronze or silver coins. For their task, he shows them a forest scorpion, instructing that they are expected to exterminate them and return with the stones embedded in their foreheads. While most of the forest scorpions are worth bronze coins, a few very strong ones are worth silver coins. Ready to embark on the quest, Lance lets Mash know that he intends to get silver coins in this task. Just before going further, one of the students in the Lang dorm named Silva, who seems to have an issue with Mash, arrives. He scolds Mash for looking down on others and uses his earth magic to create a pillar which hits Mash in the gut. Seeing this, the professor threatens to remove some of Silva's marks for that, but he apologizes. Afterwards, he heads into the forest. While he walks away, Mash tries to follow him, but is stopped by Lance, who cautions him, stating that Silva is a year above them. Besides that, he is known for misconduct and for also beating a teacher which had led him to repeat the year. Even after all these, the Academy has been unable to expel him due to his magical talents. Hearing all this, Mash is unbothered. He is more concerned about the safety of the cream puff he had hidden in his pocket. Seeing this, Lance realizes that the cream puff was the reason Mash had attempted to have a go at Silva. Shortly after, the two head into the forest together. While in the forest, Lance finds that he is alone as Mash has zoned out. Just then, Dot arrives and is shocked to see Mash. Since an opportunity has shown itself, he thinks it is time they fight. Just as they are about to do so, they hear the loud screams of a girl in the distance. Getting there, they see that she is about to be attacked by a fellow student who feels offended by her. Fortunately, she is saved by Dot, who blasts the student just before he attacks her. In appreciation, she thanks him and holds his hands, and this causes the clueless dummy who has never held a woman to be flustered. He tries his best to maintain his cool and keep calm, but she continues to thank and touch him, causing him to start acting out. At that moment, we realize that she had casted a spell on him all along, causing him to fall madly in love with her. After getting Dot, she moves to charm Mash, who spends his time eating a cream puff at the moment. Her numerous attempts at getting him to accept her thanks are futile, as he continues to state that he had no hand in saving her. After that, she tells them that she is being chased by Silva, who had been threatening her. Just as she talks about it, he appears. Speak of the devil. On his appearance, Dot wastes no time in throwing various forms of attack at him. This, however, doesn't have any effect on Silva, who uses his earth magic to shield himself from the attack. Then, he launches an attack of his own, causing an earth pillar to strike Dot's gut. A stone from this causes Mash's cream puff to fall off his hand, leading him to finally be interested in the happenings around him. He mocks their skills, stating that even a moron will see the difference. This finally gets Mash involved and ready to give Silva the beating of his life. Meanwhile, even after getting hit, Dot gets up and is more determined to save the damsel in distress. To make it fair for him, Silva offers him a deal. He promises to leave the girl alone if Dor is able to endure 5 hits from his magic. Furthermore, he makes it enticing by pitting a silver coin in the line. Without wasting much time, Dot accepts the deal. He thinks enduring 5 hits is a piece of cake. However, Lance also mentions that Mash would also have to endure 5 hits too. Since Mash has got nothing to do with this, Dot offers to take his hits too. Immediately, Lance begins the festival of hits, one after another. Dot continues to endure it. He remembers how pitiful the girl sounded while crying earlier. This causes him to be more than determined to go ahead. For the 10th hit, Silva slams Dot with multiple iron fist magic, leaving him lying lifeless. Well, that's just what Silva had thought, as Dot stands tall, shocking them all. Shortly after, he falls again to the ground, leaving Silva happy that he has achieved his aim. Even while lying on the ground, Dot beckons on Mash to flee with the girl. Unknown to him, this girl he was trying to save was friends with Silva. She had been sent by the Langdorm to charm him and force him into a duel with Silva in order to get his silver coin. Dot's utmost stupidity leaves Silva laughing uncontrollably. His loud mouth is eventually shut by Mash, who throws a cream puff into his mouth. He challenges Silva to come at him with the same 10 hits Dot had endured. This sounds pathetic to Silva, who still tries to taunt Dot for being played by the girl, wanting this piece of shit to shit the hell up. Mash charges at him, wanting to land a punch. However, Silva notices this just in time to block his attempts with his magic. This leaves a cut on Mash's face. Entering into his psychopath mode, Silva begins landing multiple iron fists on Mash, who willingly gets hit. After a few hits, Mash decides to stand his ground. He toughens his triceps and charges hard at Silva, who launches multiple iron fists at him. But Mash dodges them and lands a well-deserved punch on Silva's face. This leaves Silva bleeding through his nose as he cannot imagine what just happened. Angrily, he gets up and unleashes what's meant to be his most powerful attack at Mash. However, Mash stands his ground and punches the living hell out of him and his sorry attempt at a comeback. While Silva dwells in his pain, Mash sits down and lets him know that he has 8 more hits to go. Hearing this, Silva is scared to his bones. He had just barely survived 2 hits, and knows that he can't survive 1 more. He tries to come up with a plan to save himself. At that moment, a large forest scorpion with 2 silver coins arrives. Seeing it, Silva thinks this would be the perfect distraction to distract Mash while he escapes. To their greatest surprise, Mash sends the scorpion flying with just a punch. Seeing how pitiful Silva is, Mash decides to spare him. Just then, he sets his sights on the girl who had charmed Dot. To save herself, she starts crying. She claims Silva had forced her to do what she did and tries to deceive Mash into forgiving her. Surprisingly, Mash wraps his hands around her. When this happens, he assumes he has eventually fallen for her. However, he grabs her tightly and gives her a pro-wrestling-worthy suplex. Later on, Mash meets up with his friends and they are thrilled to hear what happened. Dot also thanks him for saving his sorry ass. While they talk, Lance reveals that Silva's attack was a plan by Lang Dorm to take all the silver coins earned by the members of Adler Dorm, which Mash belongs to. Hearing all this, Mash is unbothered. At that moment, a bright light was seen from his pocket. Reaching into it, they see that he now has 5 silver coins which have now become a gold coin. Having a gold coin makes Mash a perfect target for the Lang's Dorm's most evil students, the Maja Lupus. Due to this, Lance cautions Mash to stay away from Lang Dorm. After leaving there, Mash finds himself lost in the hallway. He sees a large door in front of him and walks up to it. Unknown to him, this door leads into the Lang Dorm. At this time, the leader had just punished Silva by turning him into a wooden puppet for his disgraceful defeat at Mash's hands. After doing this, Mash walks into the dorm with the door in his hands. Upon walking into the Lang Dorm, Mash sees the leader of the Lang Dorm talking to a doll in his hands. Also in the room, there are many dolls that seem to be students against the wall, as well as normal students standing on one side. On seeing Mash, he recognizes him as the first-year student that acquired the golden coin and asks why he wishes to be a divine visionary, to which Mash states that it is to live peacefully with his family. Upon hearing this, he tells Mash he does not deserve to be one because he lacks what it takes to be one. After listening to him, the savage Mash asks if he deserves it. The leader responds to this by boasting of how good the Lang Dorm can be and how they use and devour those weaker than them. However, at the end of the supremacy talk, Mash ends up asking if the leader also wants to live peacefully. However, Mash apologizes after realizing that the leader does not like his response. Even after apologizing, the leader tells him he can only be allowed to go back to his dorm in exchange for his golden coin. But Mash refuses to let go. The leader, with the mindset of getting the coin by force, sends a doll to attack Mash, which he effortlessly defeats. And at that moment, the doll transforms into human form and happens to be Silva. On seeing the easy defeat, the leader awakes a huge funny-looking doll, which removes the coin from Mash's pocket and flips it to the leader before punching Mash against a pillar. However, while walking out, he mistakenly steps on Silva, who is still unconscious and offers to take him to the hospital. As he makes his way out, the leader wonders if he will just give up on the coin, but Mash tells him no matter how strong he is, he can never defeat him, then leaves. After Mash had left, the leader decides to look at the coin in his hand, and to everyone's surprise, the supposed coin turns out to be a button from the huge doll's cloth. Meanwhile, Mash is able to fool the leader by using a very fast technique to swap the coin with the button when the coin is flipped to the leader. Meanwhile, Silva eventually gains consciousness and realizes he is back into a human. Suddenly, at the moment, he sees Mash doing a workout on the hospital floor. He finds out Mash is the one who brought him to the hospital, which makes him surprised since they are known to be enemies. But then, Mash tells him when one person is in trouble, they all are, which explains why he helped. Soon, he dresses up and walks out of the hospital. Meanwhile, in Finn's room, Lance and Dot are picking on each other as Dot lashes out that he does not like good-looking guys. At that moment, Finn enters and begins to wonder what is going on. The argument is all because Dot is annoyed by the fact that Lance is good-looking and tall, while Lance does not seem like Dot's personality. Soon, their argument gradually gets intense while Finn watches their display. However, as things are about to get worse and Finn shouts at them to get out, Mash suddenly breaks the door in, which makes them keep quiet. Surprisingly for Finn, Dot hands him a gift for dropping by at his place. Suddenly, at this moment, Lemon, who happens to be Dot's crush, enters the room shouting that there is big news and the boys should come with her. She takes them to a scale statue which the boys have no knowledge about. She explains to them about how the Lang Dorm has more gold coins since the start of the school year, unlike the Adler Dorm, which has only Mash's coin, as well as the Orca Dorm, which has 1 coin too. However, this means that the Divine Visionary will be from the Lang Dorm, and they have to stop it. On hearing this explanation, they all realize it is left to the Adler Dorm to fight against the Lang Dorm as Orca Dorm dedicate their time to research. However, Lemon urges Mash to do something while Lance is so determined to fish out the guys from Lang to fulfill his objective of becoming a Divine Visionary. As a team, they are all set to go head-to-head with Lang Dorm, as Mash gets set to flex his muscles. Meanwhile, unfortunately for him, his muscles end up being flexed during punishment, as the principal decides to reprimand him for his earlier actions. His punishment is to clean the owl huts for a week. This, however, doesn't seem like the perfect way he had planned to flex his muscles. However, just as he is about to start, Lance comes in, offering to help him. Mash seems surprised and asks why, to which Lance states that the Lang guys could attack him and get his coin. This would give him the chance to hunt them down. Soon, just as Lance had expected, two guys from Lang approach them in the owl hut. There, one of them casts a sea field spell that makes Mash fall into a pool of water, and the other attacks Lance with a spinning iron that he dodges. However, the guys tell them they are there for Mash's coin, and they happen to be among the strongest rank in Lang dorm. The bald-headed guy introduces himself as 6th Fang, Ullr Andrew, while the other is Answer Shinri, 5th Fang. However, Ullr suggests that they all fight for each other's coins. At this time, Mash drowns into the pool as he states he cannot swim. Suddenly, Ullr transforms into a shark and jumps into the pool too, which happens to be a large water to hunt Mash and leaves Answer with Lance. Soon, Answer begins to attack Lance with his disc-shaped weapon, but he does not retaliate as he notices that the owls are behind him and can be hurt, and his sister also appears to him to consider the innocent owls. Thinking he is weak, Answer continues to attack him and mocks him for being so weak. At this moment, Lance casts a spell that makes a shovel cut through the owl's feed, causing them to all gather on a spot. Having done this, Lance is able to dodge Answer's attack. Seeing this, Answer is so surprised since he does not think Lance is strong enough to dodge his attacks. Then, Lance tells him he did not dodge the attacks earlier because of the owls. Answer, who feels insulted from what Lance said, proceeds to attack him again. Immediately, Lance casts his spell, which breaks the weapon into pieces and also mashes Answer's head on the ground, making him realize that Lance's power is far superior to his. Meanwhile, Ullr is in the water trying to hunt Mash, but does not seem to find him in the water. Suddenly, he feels something pass by him in less than a second and gets scared. Shortly after, Mash suddenly swims past him in a flash, which makes him become more scared as he wonders how Mash is able to swim so fast because he heard him saying he does not know how to swim while drowning. Out of fear, Ullr transforms into a monster shark to be able to get Mash, only for him to be put to shame as Mash begins to run him punches in the tummy so fast till they arrive back to the surface. In the owl hut, both Answer and Ullr are lying unconscious on the ground. However, while Lance and Mash talk about how easy it is for them to take out the high-rank students of Lang dorm, they are interrupted by a member of the Lang dorm who is wearing a mask and has come to get his colleagues. On seeing him, Lance tries to attack him, but his magic stops working, which makes Mash get ready to run at him. Seeing this, the student tells them he has only come for his allies, but Mash did not listen as he charges at him. Surprisingly, he teleports swiftly to behind them and has Answer and Ullr in a bottle. He proceeds to take his leave as he tells them they would meet again. On his way, the mask on his face cracks, which makes him commend Mash's speed for being able to hit him despite how fast he teleported without using magic. And this makes him realize that Mash could be the same type as him. In the Adler dorm, Mash is trying to bake some cream puffs while Lance talks about how Lang dorm and some of their good and bad features, but Mushroom Head Mash does not seem to be listening. However, Lance hands him the dorm robe to identify him as one of them. Suddenly, Lemon runs in, shouting that Tom is in trouble. Immediately, they all rush down to the hospital where they find him sitting on the bed. There, Lemon asks what happened to him because he looks so drained, to which he tells them he does not even know what happened to him. He could only remember that he dreamt of being confined in a dark box where he was conscious but could not speak until he woke up in the hospital. It was a huge nightmare for him. However, after being asked how he feels physically, Tom made it known that he seems to have lost his magic temporarily as he can hardly feel magical energy within him, as if someone had sucked his whole energy from his body. This misfortune also seems to have happened to a lot of students as the hospital beds are filled with unconscious students whom Tom said have temporarily lost their magic too. Suspiciously, all these are happening when their headmaster was called to the Bureau of Magic. On hearing this, Lemon, who has a crush on Mash, hands over to him a toy she made, named Cream. She tells him it is a good luck charm to keep him safe from the magic-sucking demon. She also tells him not to do anything risky, as she tells him to keep the toy with him to think about her, blushing. Later at night, while Mash and Lance walk down the dorm passage, Lance mentions that he knows Maja Lupus are behind the things happening. Suddenly, Mash stops him, asking him if they are supposed to be walking around school this late. Just then, Dot interrupts all of a sudden and Finn, who is always scared, asks them not to leave him alone in the room as he joins them. However, the boys get to join them, and as they walk down the passages, they suddenly find Lemon taking a walk down the passage too. Seeing her from behind alone, Dot feels very happy and tries to call her name, but Lance shuts him immediately because he feels something is off about her. At this moment, to their greatest shock, they realize Lemon has transformed into a wooden doll, and immediately hides behind the wall before she could see them. While they wonder what happened to her, Finn informs them about the direction she is going, and they all trail her down the passage until they get to a dead end and become confused of where she entered. Suddenly, Finn and Dot hear a wood cracking sound and become very scared until Lance uses his magic stick to reveal a giant door. Dot, who thinks he has the ability, tries to blow open the door with his magic, but it ends up failing him. Just then, Mash steps forward, carrying a knight statue like a mighty superhero, and uses it and its sword as a tool to force open the door, which he sends flying out of the building into the sky. However, underneath the door are the stairs that lead to the underground, which they believe Lemon is, as well as Maja Lupus. To find Lemon, they walk down the stairs. On getting to the lower ground, Finn is surprised to see that the school has such a place, which makes Mash believe it is a secret base. However, they continue to walk down the passage while Lance, who believes their enemies had chosen this place as their hideout since it must give them an advantage, leads. As they walk, Dot suddenly sees a light in the distance, and when they follow it, they are led to an arena. At this moment, a handsome-looking guy appears and informs them that where they are is an ancient dueling field that even the teacher has no idea about. He tells them he is there to eradicate intruders like them on request of the third Fang. Therefore, they have to wager on a coin and challenge him if they want to proceed in their search. On hearing this, Dot steps out to challenge him alone because of his hate for good-looking guys. The guy mocks him for lacking a good face and brain, which means he cannot lose to him. This insult is as a result of Dot rants about how much he hates guys like him. The boy unleashes a whip from his wand in readiness to fight. During the fight, when the guy already thinks he is going to win, Dot shows him the limit of his power by setting up magical explosive landmines around him and advises him to watch his step. The guy, who thinks he cannot fall for the trap, casts his whip spell to grab Dot, causing his wand to fall off and allowing the guy to stab him with thorns from his whip. But then, with the intention of throwing Dot aggressively to the ground, the whips touch the landmines. This causes it to explode massively, causing the guy's wand to blow off. Unknown to him, this happens to be Dot's plan all along. Surprisingly, when the smoke around the explosion clears off, they see the handsome guy sitting in a stylish pose as he lets off an annoying smirk. Meanwhile, when they think it is all over, they suddenly find themselves getting sucked into the ground. Lance finds himself alone in the open ground and realizes they have been separated. Soon, a member of the Maja Lupus, who isn't satisfied with the fact that he has to fight Lance instead of Mash, approaches him. The guy introduces himself as the third Fang of Magic Lupus, Worth Maddle. Meanwhile, Finn and Dot also meet with their opponents, which happens to be a boy and a girl. They introduce themselves as the fifth Fang of Maja Lupus, Love Cute, and fourth Fang, Milo Genius. Realizing that they are double-liners, Finn's becomes so scared, but Dot is not, as he is determined to defeat them. On the other hand, Mash also meets his opponent, who happens to be the masked guy from before. The guy introduces himself as the second Fang, Abyss Razor, and before they fight, Abyss commends Mash's abilities, which he showed the day they met, finding them impressive. However, after some talks, Abyss wields his sword, and they are both ready to fight, as well as others. Meanwhile, Lance and Worth are the first to begin their fight as Lance uses his gravity spell to smash Worth's face to the ground as he tells him he has no time for games. Just then, Worth's body turns into mud, and what Lance thinks would be an easy peasy turns out to be the other way around as Worth begins to trick by cloning himself into Six, which Lance luckily uses his gravity spell to smash again. Surprisingly, Worth appears behind him, gets him stuck to the ground and proceeds to throw him heavy mud balls. Thinking Lance is easy to defeat, Worth begins to mock him of being from a good bloodline, but being a waste. Furthermore, he urges Lance to join Maja Lupus as his skills are good and has to be where it can flourish. He stylishly rubbished the Adler dorm as well, which makes Lance tell him that the strength of his conviction is not superficial enough for the environment to matter. Hearing this, Worth has no ideas of what Lance means, which makes Lance refer to him as a second-rate. However, this makes Worth become angry, but before he could do anything, Lance attacks him with gravity magic, but this time, throwing his body to the side wall. Despite this, Worth still remains confident that all Lance's attacks won't make a difference since gravity magic needs a place to smash your opponent into, and he hopes Lance does not figure it out. This seems to be too late as Lance shoots some rubbles created from the mud around, which one cuts his face. This attack forces him to come out in the open and wonders if Lance had figured out his anti-gravity trick. But then, Lance tells him that his environment, which is the Adler dorm, is superior to theirs in contrast to what Worth said about Adler. Hearing this, Worth has a flashback of his growing up and his journey in relation to magic lupus and how strong he is. Just then, he opens a concentrated magical essence extracted from other students and pours it into his mouth. Apparently, he had been awarded this essence as a member of Magia Lupus, making them special. To prove his point, he conjures a powerful magic that brings to birth a big and powerful mud monster. However, with this monster behind him, he begins to educate Lance about how magic is earned. He also remembers his father's words concerning how magic defines his worth, which is a motivation for him to be worthy. And since he thinks Lance hangs out with worthless junks, he is of the opinion that the magic he possesses is at a level that Lance will never achieve. At this moment, he suddenly attacks Lance, who dodged the attack swiftly. Remembering what Worth said about his friends, he tells him he is the only one allowed to insult them, and not his dumbass self. Suddenly, he cast a spell that set up torture poles around the monster, which eventually tears it apart, leaving Worth devastated. Because of this, Worth believes he has no worth indeed, in accordance with his father's words. Just then, Lance throws him a book and educates him on what worth means. Since their parents had placed such a meaning for worth, he thinks they were probably raised similarly, even though he hates the way Worth talks and reacts. Then, he walked away. On the other hand, Mash and Abyss begin to fight. Mash runs to attack him, but Abyss teleports from him and cuts his arm swiftly. Abyss tells him he cannot win against him, then proceeds to use his speed magic to inflict multiple cuts on him, which he is unable to attack. He cautions Mash to stop trying to challenge him, promising not to go easy on him. But all he said does not seem to be of importance to our coconut-headed fellow. Soon, he shows Mash an image of Lemon, having her magic drained with a device which would cause her to lose her magic in 30 minutes. Also, this device would make her lose her mark and her ability to use magic forever. Then, he asks if Mash would not be happy to have his friend become like him. Hearing this, Mash becomes angry and promises to make Abyss' mask break in pieces. Suddenly again, Abyss begins to cut him from different angles at a very fast speed until he eventually stabs Mash in the stomach. Surprisingly for him, Mash did not flinch as uses the abdominal muscle to keep the sword in him and grabs Abyss. Suddenly, he uses his head to smash the mask off Abyss' face, keeping to his promise. At this moment, Abyss' red eye is revealed, which Mash doesn't know what it is. Abyss tells him it is an evil eye that temporarily disabled magic of all who fall under its gaze. And since magic is all that matters in their world, this makes Abyss a natural enemy of all magic users. Hearing this, Mash feels bad for him, but also relaxed that Abyss is unable to use the eye on him. Shortly after, Abyss creates an Acceleraze force field around them that makes him attack Mash with no means of defense. However, the field is created to slow down the opponent's attack, which makes him continue to cut Mash mercilessly. Suddenly, at a moment, Mash smashes the ground, opening it up in order to narrow Abyss' movements. Then, he lands a punch before stepping on Abyss' foot, which makes him remain in a position. Using this advantage, Mash begins to punch the living hell out of him from every angle. Soon, he decides to finish him off by smashing him to the ground so hard, causing the force field to collapse. Lying helpless on the ground, Abyss wonders what would have happened if he was born normal. This is because of how his parents treated him because of his eye. Upon hearing out his story, Mash feels sorry for him and asks that they become friends. However, he declines the offer because he believes Mash would leave him too. Then, he advises that they desist from their mission as he and his friends cannot defeat Lord Abel. Hearing this, Mash thanks him for the advice and tells him that he would never change towards him because of his eyes. Then, he proceeds to say he would love to have cream puffs with him when next they meet. It is now Dot and Finn turn to fight, and the fourth Fang, Milo, leaves the girl to deal with them. Surprisingly, she begins to ask if they like her or find her attractive as she acts all cute. Hearing this, Dot tells her he cannot marry her because he has Lemon, even though she is his type of girl. Because of his response, she begins to feel bad and angry. Suddenly, she casts an attack against them with her staff, which Dot is able to counter. Despite her anger, she decides to ask the same question again, and Dot's answer still remains that he is in love with Lemon. Hearing this, Love becomes angry and attacks him over and over again, causing him to fall hard on the ground. Then, she tells them her daddy tells her she can kill any guy that does not cherish her. At this moment, Dot gets up angrily and tells her he does not care what her daddy tells her as he proceeds to launch his explosive spell at her. This causes a smoke around her, and he tries to use this opportunity to get her staff, but she catches up and sends him flying in her tornado spell. She mocks him for being so weak as she talks about Milo's ability to turn Mash into a stone statue. Then, she tells them this takes effect after 2 hours of Milo storing energy, which means they have to defeat her in 30 minutes, and go after Milo or Mash would be turned into a stone. Immediately, she descends a tornado upon Dot and says this is what he gets for wanting to go up again Lord Abel. This tornado seems to be draining Dot as he thinks of how pathetic he used to be around his friends when he was small. Then, his friends would always allow his friend to take advantage of him. Until one day, his sister scares off his bad friends and tells him about getting a real true friend, and when he finds that friend, he must not betray him. Because of this, Dot recalls Mash getting angry on his behalf and protecting him, therefore, he has to protect him too. Surprisingly, this makes Dot determined to win and breaks through the tornado spell while Love is about to harm Finn. Surprised at this, she tries to attack him, but he counters it. All of a sudden, a cross mark appears on his forehead that Love identifies as Warding Cross. This cross is of battle demons who unleash their magic power when their emotions cross a certain level. Immediately, Dot casts 100 machine guns at her, saying he would never allow them to get to Mash. However, he missed his target on purpose because he does not pick on girls, and this makes Love thank him. Seeing this, Finn is surprised that Dot defeats the fifth Fang alone. All of a sudden, a giant stone monster appears behind Finn and Dot runs to save him from it, but gets stabbed in seed and the stone disappears. Just then, Milo arrives to take on them himself, giving up his energy storing. Immediately, huge stone hands stretch from the walls towards Finn and Dot to attack them. But surprisingly for them, a big sword suddenly moves swiftly and hits Milo so hard, causing him to collapse to the ground. However, a guy with the same hair colors as Finn steps forward, and Milo, who wonders what he is doing down there, identifies him as the divine visionary, Rain Ames. Rain happens to be a student of the Adler dorm. At this moment, Milo thinks he can go against Rain, and invokes a giant stone head from the ground which Rain's sword cut in half without him looking. Because of this, Rain charges multiple swords at him at once to teach him a lesson. Crying, Milo tells him he has no choice but to do as he is told. Hearing this, Rain kicks him and begins to stomp him as he tells him his excuse is not genuine. Then, he tells Finn and Dot to leave while he drags the details out of Milo. While this goes on, Love takes to her heels unnoticed. Meanwhile, Finn keeps looking at Rain and calls him brother, surprising Dot. Shortly after, while Rain walks along the pathway, Mash arrives behind him while he stuffs his face with a cream puff. However, immediately Rain sees Mash. He feels some kind of energy around him. Then, he tells him he does not want to waste time and brings out his wand, which causes a big talking spider to drop mid-air. This spider is to test if Mash is a student with magic or not. To do this, Rain tests Mash by suddenly charging a sword at him, but Mash immediately stops it with 2 fingers and wonders what is going on. Surprisingly, the spider could not detect any magic in Mash as his numbers are 0s. Rain charges a few swords at Mash the second time, and Mr. Terminator uses it to craft a chair and sits on it in style. Lastly, he charges lots of swords at Mash at once, and he is able to dodge everything very fast with a sword. Despite all this, the spider still reads 0s for Mash's magic, which is difficult to believe. Rain, who finds this odd, asks Mash of his name, and when he tells him, he apologizes for his rudeness immediately, as he has been told about Mash by Mr. Wahlberg. Then, he tells Mash about how tough it will be for them to go up against Lord Abel as his doll magic is powerful for what is required of a student. But if he wants to go ahead, he should make sure he defeats him and gets all his coins, which would get him closer to being the divine visionary. Soon, Rain takes his leave and Mash gets to locate Lord Abel's chamber to challenge him. On getting there, Mash, who is clearly now acting like a fool, knocks off the door to gain entrance into the place again like before. Inside, Mash is met by a disturbing sight of magic being drained out of multiple puppets. Seeing him, Lord Abel commends his ability of being able to face Abyss evil eye aside from Rain. He, however, finds it hard to believe that Mash is a better magic user than Rain, who is a divine visionary. In his talks, he tells Mash to understand that the world does not treat everyone equally, therefore, they have to let go of the weak. Hearing this, Mash presumes the weak are those that cannot use magic, and Lord Abel's confirms that is what he means. Meanwhile, because Lord Abel dislikes the weak, he plans to make a reform, which would include segregating other underachievers and those who shelter the weak. On hearing this, the only person that comes to Mash's mind is his father, and how he cares for him with so much love and encouragement. However, the idiot bluntly tells Lord Abel that his way is a problem, and does not think they can be friends. Hearing this, Lord Abel feels offended and disappointed that Mash does not understand all that he has said, and refers to Mash as a dense person. Since he has proven to be an inferior gene, Lord Abel feels he should start his reform, which causes him to release some puppets on Mash. While this is going on, Love approaches the hall and peeps in after seeing that the door is broken. There, she sees a puppet charging at Mash and quickly hides herself, terrified. However, when Mash punches one of the dolls, a yellow substance comes out, and it turns out to be acidic. Fortunately, he is able to dodge it, preventing it from touching him. To protect himself, Mash suddenly grabs the head of the doll he had punched earlier. Then, he uses it as a bowling ball to eliminate the dolls without having to go close to them or touch them, shocking Love and Abel. Feeling funky about his defeat, Mash asks Lord Abel if it means he has inferior genes if he beats him. Hearing this, Lord Abel feels insulted and tells him to shut up. But the dumbass ignores and asks to know what he has done with Lemon. But then, Lord Abel does not seem to know who he is talking about, especially since all he claims to be doing is receive magic power from his victims. But then, Mash finds his act sickening. Shortly after, he sends in big clown dolls to attack Mash, thinking that the mighty moron cannot stop them. Meanwhile, to their surprise, Mash punches all the dolls in the twinkle of an eye, destroying them in the process. However, Mash demands that Lord Abel tell him where Lemon is if he wins, which shows how confident he is in winning. Seeing this, Lord Abel decides to use his string magic and begin to control Mash's body, causing him to punch and strangle himself. Suddenly, Lord Abel stops because he feels that it was one-sided. Instead, he reveals Mash's friend, Finn, who has now become a puppet. Then, he says that had captured Finn earlier because he felt he would make good entertainment. But he left Dot because he was too badly injured to be useful. Immediately, he charges Finn to attack Mash, who dodges it. But surprisingly, he tells Mash not to raise a finger or counterattack, or he would break Finn apart. This causes him to keep getting hit with an axe. Eventually, after Finn hits Mash so powerfully with the axe, Lord Abel is so shocked to see that it has been broken. At this moment, the human without a brain mocks Lord Abel for thinking he is a deep person, getting him angry. Just then, Mash brings out his golden coin from his pocket, which Lord Abel thinks he wants to give up. But suddenly, Mash forcefully flips the coin, causing it to cut the threads controlling Finn. This helps Finn to transform back into human. Mockingly, Mash apologizes, stating that the coin just likes him. Out of anger, Lord Abel casts his string spell on Mash to control him, but Mash breaks out of it as he is determined to have Lord Abel regret lashing out at his friends. Immediately, he charges at Lord Abel and kicks him hard in the face. However, while trying to punch him again, Lord Abel casts a spell that transforms Mash into a puppet. Lord Abel, confident that he has defeated Mash and has him under his control, goes close to him and searches his jacket to get the golden coin. However, to his surprise, he ends up bringing out the cream puff Masha had kept there earlier. All of a sudden, Mash punches him and grabs the cream puff. Seeing this, Lord Abel wonders how he was able to free himself, despite having fully transformed into a puppet. What just happened is something impossible to him. But then, after thinking of what might be the cause, he realizes Mash sure has a spinal reflex. This is the instinctive reaction to stimuli, and it must have been triggered by the cream puff being taken from him. Since his previous spells do not seem to work on Mash, Lord Abel decides to extract magic power from his dolls and creates a three-headed centipede-like puppet. This puppet is said to have the ability to turn everyone within a 100-meter radius into a puppet. But then, the transformation into a puppet will begin the moment a person is touched by the invincible strings. Meanwhile, Lord Abel, who thinks he has finally gotten Mash, gets the shock of his life when he sees that Mash has pulled out the puppet hands. Shocked, Love explains that Mash used his body instincts to feel the strings touch and grabs it immediately. Also, Mash punches the puppet so hard, piecing it. Shortly after, the dumbass hero charges at Lord Abel and crashes his head against the ground in defeat. Knowing he has been defeated, Lord Abel tells Mash he is doing all this because of his mother. He explains that his mother was killed by the same poor people she always helped. Hearing the reason for his actions, Mash decides to spare him. Then, he demands that he release Lemon as agreed. Immediately, Lord Abel decides to release not just Lemon, but every other student he had turned into dolls. Because of their victory, Mash and his friends begin to rejoice, including Dot, who arrives with a squeezed face, until suddenly, they wonder where Lance is. Elsewhere in the underground, Rain encounters a guy who takes on Lance's form. Seeing the guy transform into his true self, Rain identifies him as a member of Innocent Zero. This is a dark magic organization that works in the shadows of society. There, Rain asks what he is doing in the school, to which the guy says it is something important. Then, he reveals that they had sent Lord Abel to search for the important thing, but he failed, so he is there to kill him. Suddenly, the bad guy makes to leave, and Rain tries to stop him. Just then, he gets confronted by a serial killer and cannibal named Jean-Pierre. Looking at him, Rain realizes his power is similar to that of a divine visionary, which makes him a difficult opponent. But then, he is worried about Mash and his friends as they are unaware of what is coming for them. Meanwhile, Mash and his friends are still dwelling on their victory. Suddenly stops them and asks for an excuse to use the bathroom, and leaves their midst. However, when the students worry about Lance's whereabouts, just then, the bad guy floats in. Seeing him, Lemon asks who he is, but this only ends with them being flung off to the side, as the guy makes his way to Lord Abel. Seeing him covered in blood, the bad guy mocks him for being pathetic as he cannot even rise to the top in the school. All of a sudden, he bewitches Lord Abel's hand, causing him to strangle himself. Then, he tells him since he has failed to do his job cannot. They do not need him again as well. At this moment, the dumbass, Mash gets back into the chamber with a tower of cream puffs, which he has brought for them to party with, unaware of the situation. The bad guy seems offended by this as he wonders who he is. Just then, a fly lands on Mash's nose, which makes him sneeze so hard that he sends the cream puffs flying and pasted on the bad guy's forehead. Luckily, this incident helps to release Lord Abel from his strangling. However, just as the bad guy is about to talk, he feels a weird headache and begins to wonder if Mash's presence is behind it. Also, he doubts if Mash is the person they have been looking for. Suddenly, he switches to complete his mission of killing Lord Abel and charges a huge sharp metal at him. But surprisingly, Abyss sacrifices himself for Lord Abel as he takes the hit instead. Because of this, the bad guy retreats his weapon and Abyss apologies to Mash as he does not think he can eat the cream puff with him. This makes Mash hand him the healing handkerchief Rain gave him earlier to reduce the injury. Just then, when the bad guy begins to talk trash, Mash stomps the ground and throws a rock at him, but which he surprisingly catches. Weirdly, the bad guy licks the rock and promises to kill Mash. Just as expected, the knucklehead also promises to beat the hell out of him if he tries to stop him from taking Abyss to the hospital. Soon, they begin there. Hearing this, the bad guy plans to delay him for 30 minutes to see if he would be able to save Abyss after. Just then, he begins to cast multiple big metal weapons at Mash, non-stop. Meanwhile, seeing how strong the bad guy is, Lord Abel believes they cannot win against him, and blames Abyss for protecting him. Immediately, Mash replies to him, telling him how happy Abyss is to be with him after being lonely for a long time. Then, Mash tells him about how he would feel if he happens to be in the same situation too. Therefore, he would make sure to save him. Hearing this, Lord Abel remembers his mother's advice of putting himself in others' position. At this moment, Abyss gains a bit of consciousness and calls out to Lord Abel. But he begins to remember how he was abandoned and hated until Lord Abel accepts him. Then, he pleads with him to run while he can. However, as the attack gets intense, everyone begins to worry about Mash getting hurt. All of a sudden, Lord Abel summons the three-headed puppet to shield Mash from the incoming weapons. However, this puppet happens to be no match for the bad guy as he destroys it in a jiffy. But to his surprise, Mash appears from inside one of the puppet's heads and punches him hard in the face. Seeing how strong and powerful our super commando is, the bad guy asks what magic is. Knowing he does not use magic, Mash answers that his magic is power, surprising everyone. The bad guy, thinking Mash does not want to answer him, brings out an ancient magical mirror. This mirror is said to send magic back to the user if used before it. Seeing this, everyone begins to panic that Mash would fall for the trap. However, to their surprise, Mash suddenly kicked the mirror off the bad guy's hand, breaking it in the process. Meanwhile, everyone gets the shock of their lives to find out that all of Mash's stunts and defeats were not done by magic, but by his body strength alone. Again, the bad guy does not seem to be affected by Mash's kick. Suddenly, a mark appears on the back of the bad guy's hand, which he thinks appeared probably because he touched Mash. At this moment, he licks his lips and a portal breaks open behind him like a glass and two scary giant hands stretch from it. Eventually, the bad guy introduces himself as Cell War, and as the hand guides him into the portal, he tells them he has to go because he has an urgent errand, but he promised Mash they would meet again soon. Then he vanished. Seeing their problem is gone, Mash suggests they take Abyss to the hospital, but Lord Abel tells him not to worry as the handkerchief has reduced the wound's severity. Abyss, who is being carried by a clown puppet, tells Mash to treat him to cream puff the next time they meet. Lord Abel also thanks Mash for his help and promises to return the favor. Then he leaves with Abyss and the puppet. Left alone, Dot and others approach Mash and begin to talk about their new discovery about him. But then, they think Mash being expelled because of his inability to use magic will be terrible. Hearing all this, Mash finds it hard to respond as he begins to stammer. As good friends, Dot and the rest think they can help by keeping Mash's secret. But unfortunately for them, one of the students that was turned into a puppet hears about their huge secret and promises to tell the teachers. Realizing that his secret is no longer a secret, Mash does not seem bothered. Instead, he brings out a cream puff from his pocket and begins to munch on it, not bothering about what comes next. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.